Last night, Gary Lyon was resolute here at the desk that Sam Mitchell should come forward and answer the questions that were starting to swirl around him and his role in Hawthorn's succession plan. Sam did that this morning when he joined me on SEN.
There is a version which says that there was concern that Alastair had gone into his shell to a degree, was not coping with the announcement and was not necessarily happy about working with Sam.
This can't work.
I'm told that during that meeting it became clear that Sam Mitchell would rather have clean air, to have a fresh start next year without Alastair Clarkson by his side.
Now we're being told a week later he's saying I want him out. I don't know that to be true, right? If it is, Sam Mitchell's the wrong man to coach Hawthorn. You cannot sit there and agree, yes, I agree to this. I will coach for 18 months at Box Hill. I will coach under the great Clark. I see the sacrifice. And a week later turn up and go, no, I want him out.
I've consistently said I want Alastair there. Very, very natural meeting. Not a mediation meeting, a meeting, as I said, that's been planned to work out what their responsibilities are going to be over the next, 18 months.
I personally believe that if Jeff Kennett had his way and if it wasn't going to cost him more than $1 million, Sam Mitchell would be the senior coach of the Hawthorn Football Club next year. My view is it's a mess, and I don't think it was a good idea.
Those comments that were made last night, I don't know if they're true or not. It would stagger me if that... So that is why I want to hear from Sam.
Sam, have you suggested you want to be Hawthorn coach next year and would prefer Alastair Clarkson not be at the Hawks?
Absolutely not. That has not happened. I kind of get a bit pissed off with people saying that. Nothing about anything I've done. I've worked with Clarko for nearly 20 years. And the fact that people would say that I'm trying to push him out is disrespectful to both of us, because we've had a working relationship for such a long period of time that I did get a little bit frustrated with people saying, oh, he's just trying to get Clarkson out.
Is it possible anything that you expressed in that meeting could have been misconstrued as wanting to take over next season?
No, I'm not. I don't think that is part of it. You know, everything's a little bit grey. So recruiting, for instance, will be mainly my area and Clarko would be involved. And the game plan is mainly Clarko's area and I would be a little bit involved. But we're just working on all these little details, and that's part of what a good organisation does. They have to plan for the future.
Is there any circumstance you can foresee in which you're coaching Hawthorn next year without Alastair at the club?
No. Sam
Mitchell was unequivocal in what he answered this morning. He described it as a baptism of fire. I think that's a pretty accurate depiction.
Yeah, we got a pretty good insight in that interview, which was great. Well done, Gerard. That Sam Mitchell is a combative character, and all the traits that we saw as a player, they were on full display today, I think, and that looks to be a bit of an insight into what he's going to be as a coach, which I think will serve him well in some regards. To be combative with the media the whole way through, I think would be a stretch. So I think there'll be a softening. What was really interesting to me to come out of that was the timeline.
Yes.
That was the sticking point for me.
So Sam wanted it absolutely clear that he hadn't taken Alastair's job, and he walked through the Hawthorn scenario that's... And this is where... So my view the whole way through is this has been a political power play between Kennett and Clarkson, and Mitchell has had no hand in any of that. And the way that Mitchell described it today is the Hawthorn board made its decision on Clarkson and told him that he wasn't going to continue, and then come to him and essentially offered him the job.
So it has nothing to do with succession. That they are mutually exclusive decisions. And I take Sam Mitchell absolutely at his word that these are mutually exclusive decisions, which for me shifts the focus and the scrutiny back onto the board, because it becomes more of a mind-boggling decision, irrespective of whether Sam Mitchell can coach or not. They've wound up Alastair Clarkson without knowing whether Sam Mitchell even wanted the job. So what if Sam Mitchell turned around and said, well, I'm actually pretty keen on the Collingwood job? They were still going to go ahead and wind up Clarko at the end of 2022. That's what Sam Mitchell said today.
So the idea of the succession plan generates in our minds that the elder statesman chooses the protege, ushers him through, shepherds him into the job and then lovingly hands over. That's not the case. And It wasn't the case with Malthouse and Buckley, and it's not the case with Clarkson and Mitchell. It's a much more pragmatic decision. Hawthorn wants change, and Kennett wants Mitchell to be the coach and to walk that path. Now, what does it look like within a season, within next year? I felt like you can have different philosophies within defined roles, and they are working through the process now. Buckley and Malthouse made it to the end of their period together by Buckley staying the hell out of the way. So Mitchell's play is to tend to what he's given and let Clarkson get on with the business of coaching the team next year.
Yeah, so that asks the question really, well, can it be successful? Well, really, the only way you look back retrospectively on whether a succession plan, call it what you want, is successful or not, is whether the next bloke can coach. That's the only way you look at it, because next year, you know, Alastair Clarkson didn't want this, and Sam Mitchell's been given an opportunity. And I've got great respect and admiration for both men. They could be best friends in this scenario, but it is still going to create a tension and a divide, because there's a split vision now, because Alastair Clarkson is coaching for the immediate short term next year, and Sam Mitchell is going to be coaching for the long term and the future. So for me, there's way too much focus on those two men and not enough focus on the Hawthorn board that have made this decision and put both of these men, they've put the 4-time premiership coach in the corner, and they've put Sam Mitchell in a position where it is just going to be so difficult for him at every term. And he alluded to as much. Every win is going to be, they shouldn't have gotten rid of Clarkson because he's the master coach. And every loss is going to be, well, it's not working out because this succession's getting in the way.
Yep.
Not to mention what it's going to do to the players. So the players, there are players on that list that were sold a dream. O'Meara, Wingard, Mitchell. So all of a sudden, if they're loyal to Clarko, do they feel at odds with the incoming coach, Sam Mitchell? I mean, there are so many layers to this, and I think heaping all the attention onto Alastair Clarkson v Sam Mitchell it's not where we should be focusing our attention.
Yep. The one thing I do feel sure of, having listened to Sam, is that the depiction that he is trying to run Clarko out is unfair.
Oh, completely
so
unfair.
All the machinations
and that's not his doing.
Is unfair.
That's the board's doing. So that's the situation I'm talking about. Because Sam Mitchell could be a great coach, but at this stage, the Hawthorn board have not run a full interview process. They haven't done the due. Well, they've done the diligence on Sam Mitchell, obviously, but they haven't run a proper coaching hiring process.